Search results for The View Jamaica. Row, The View Jamaica Exploring Truth at The View Jamaica, 18 subscriber. The View Jamaica Live Now. Row, The View Jamaica, 18 subscriber.
Good evening and welcome, viewers and subscribers. Welcome to this first episode of The View. As I stated in the introduction video to the show, is that the main objective of this show is to explore truth, especially in Jamaica's political arena. As you all are aware, the general election is due sometime this year, whichever time the prime minister chooses to call it, as they said. And both political parties are actively campaigning now and stuff. But with this season, there's a lot of misinformation in the public domain. And because of that, we want to explore truth. And because we want to explore truth, we want to make sure that whatever you hear, that it is the truth. And so because of that, I think that as a viewing public, you have that right. You have that right to hear what is true. And so that's the objective of this YouTube channel. That's my objective, because I think as voters, we need to hold our political leaders accountable. And whenever they say something, it must be believable. And we must not go out and, my word here, try to trick people and tell people things that really is not so. And because of that, I think it is a responsibility to bring to you facts and stuff. And because of that, there are some topics right now that is both in the public media, but more so on social media. For instance, the question is out there, that Jamaica is in a recession and stuff. And another thing is that the leader of the opposition also recently, and again, my word, try to mislead the public in regards to the SSSL and Usain Bolt's money and stuff. While he did not say directly, but what he said would cause people to think that persons in the government knew that SSL was going down and stuff. So we want to look at those things today. And I am pleased, very, very pleased to have joining me today for this first show, one of the newly minted senator, and I would say the main spokesperson for the Jamaica Labour Party, Senator Marlon Morgan. Senator Morgan, welcome.
Afternoon, Andrew.
Anthony.
Apologies.
Yes, that's all right.
Man. Good afternoon to our viewers as well.
Yes.
And while I'm at it, commend you on this very important step and congratulate you as well to add to the platforms that are available to persons, members of the public who are seeking to avail themselves of wholesome and informative content. And I dare say you're doing your civic duty in that regard in terms of bringing perspectives. You make no bones about your political sympathies, and of course, what you consider to be the facts and what is good and in the interest of Jamaica. And I think that's a commendable step, and I'm delighted to be your first guest on this, the inaugural edition of The View.
And Senator, I want to declare right off the bat that at this point in time, I support the Jamaica Labour Party. And if I could just give a little history towards that, while I was working in Jamaica in 2011, I think it was right after Bruce Golden resigned, and right after the elections that the present Prime Minister lost to Mrs. Simpson Miller. And I went to the leader of the opposition then office to do a recording, and we're having a conversation, and I asked him the question, why he wants to become Prime Minister of Jamaica and stuff. And he said he's going to invite me to a meeting, and he invited me, and we sit, and he laid out his vision for Jamaica and stuff. And you know, that election that he lost, he was criticized for, I would say, telling the people the truth, telling them that bitter medicine. Yes.
He was very frank, speaking at that now infamous meeting in Mandeville.
Right.
Where he indicated that, yes, in relation to the reforms that Jamaica would have to undergo, there would have to have been some belt tightening. But with the steady hands of his administration and, the pursuit of stability and the people being at the forefront of what he is about in the politics, we would have navigated those reforms and come out of it better. And as it turned out, we lost those elections and we ended up, yes, undergoing reforms. But the sharp distinction I'd like to make is that opposed to the approach that was taken by Mrs. Simpson-Miller's administration and Dr. Phillips as finance minister, we felt that there was not sufficient creativity and sufficient effort being expended to usher in economic growth, because austerity alone, we felt, and we still feel that way today, which is what underpins much of the programs and initiatives that we roll out as an administration. We feel that austerity in and of itself, belt tightening in and of itself, would not take us to where we wanted to go in terms of improved public service delivery, improving people's quality of life, and creating some ease to the burdens that the Jamaican people have often been confronted with over the years. And that is why between 2012 and 2016 February, Jamaica was saddled with essentially $60 billion worth of new taxes. So that is what was levied by Dr. Phillips and the administration of which he was a part over that period of time.
Right. Yes. So it was out of that conversation where my respect drew for Dr. Andrew Holness. And until this day, I think since he has become Prime Minister, he has run the country with what I consider as a steady hand and stuff. I heard Cliff Hughes use a term to describe him recently, which is resilient, because he has faced a lot of negativity, a lot of downright lies and stuff, but he has withstood. he has stand firm and stuff.
And Cliff went further to say that lesser men would have been broken by some of those, spears from the detractors, from the naysayers. But that's what national leadership is about. It's about being resilient in your own right, being firm in your own mind as to what you are about and what the direction in which you're seeking to take the people you lead. And once you can be assured that in terms of your own experience and aptitude as an individual, once you're assured that that is the considered thing and the best thing to do, then you will essentially tune out negativity and move decisively and assiduously in delivering for the people you lead.
Yes. All right, Senator Morgan. Let's go to the first topic on my agenda here, which is whether or not Jamaica is in a recession. And before you and I discuss this topic, I'm going to play a clip from a TVJ newscast, and then we'll discuss the topic.
Up first this evening, the Jamaican economy is not in a recession. That assessment from the Planning Institute of Jamaica, PIOJ, at a press briefing today.
Now, the PIOJ's evaluation is usually made public 6 weeks after each quarter. Today's
Did you know that Amazon has a $50 million fund that they have to pay out every month?
Sorry about that.
announcement is timely given the clash between government and the opposition about the true state of Jamaica's economy.
On Wednesday, PIOJ Director General Dr. Wayne Henry admitted the Jamaican economy declined for 2 consecutive quarters, June and September 2024, but said other factors have to be considered.
Examining the other official data from Statin on Jamaica's unemployment rate, another widely used economic indicator of a recession, we get a different picture. The unemployment rate for October 2024 is 3.5%, and employers have also lamented challenges and shortages in filling some vacant positions. This suggests that despite the temporary contraction in output, the labor market continues to remain robust and may be considered a lead indicator of a return to growth in the short term. This is also supported by the most recent data on business and consumer confidence levels, which indicate positive sentiments by both consumers and businesses regarding current and future economic prospects. It is therefore the PIOJ's assessment that the Jamaican economy, though facing a downturn in economic output, is not in a recession. However,
all right, so I'm going to stop the clip right there because in plain economic term, it is said that 2 consecutive decline is of an economy is really considered a recession. But the PIOJ director was at pain to point out that circumstances will also have to be taken into consideration for you to say that a country is in recession. So I am going to give you the floor, Senator Morgan, to explain to our viewers and subscribers why the Jamaican economy is not in a recession.
All right, so Jamaica, there's no doubt, recorded 2 successive quarters of contraction in economic output. Now, for those persons who are being superficial and are being unreasonable, they will seek to reference and invoke the textbook definition of a recession without having any regard to some broader considerations which would help observers and the public in general understand and appreciate what is happening. So in very clear terms, although Jamaica has recorded 2 successive quarters of contraction or decline in economic output, that being for the September 2024 quarter and the December 2024 quarter, Jamaica is not in a recession, because a focus on GDP in terms of economic output alone in determining whether an economy is in recession is insufficient. An economy, Anthony, has many different variables operating and at play. You have consumer spending, You have what is happening with jobs, what is happening with people's income, what is happening with business in terms of business confidence and consumer confidence as well. And so in Jamaica's case, we are very mindful as to the context within which Jamaica recorded 3.5% decline in economic output for the September quarter, because in July of 2024, Jamaica, being a small island developing state and being a country in the Caribbean basin, we know that Jamaica is susceptible to the dynamics and vagaries of adverse weather systems, whether they are tropical storms or full-blown hurricanes. And so Jamaica suffered a major hurricane last year, a massive category 4 or category 5 system. It was Hurricane Beryl. And so you do not come out of a major weather event which had considerable deleterious impact on your agricultural sector, on the delivery of utilities, because when Beryl passed and impacted Jamaica, it meant, and it caused dislocation in the delivery of utilities such as water supply and, of course, electricity. Those things are critical in your counting and measuring of GDP. And so to the extent that agricultural output, because your agricultural produce would have been destroyed with the passage of Beryl, because agricultural output went down, you also had things counting against your economic output when it is valued ultimately, when the analysts are considering and determining what real GDP was for the period in question. So for the benefit of the listeners and the viewers, and of course your subscribers, what has to be understood is that the fundamentals of the Jamaican economy are in place. Jamaica's economy is strong, resilient, and of course stable. What created and caused the downturn for the past 2 quarters was not policy errors or any fundamental economic weakness or structural deficiencies in the economy. It was simply the passage of a weather system, and for the persons who are seeking to exploit that adverse weather event that Jamaica suffered for the politics of it, we take a dim view of those persons, because the truth is weather events do not respond to political administrations. You may have a serious tropical storm or indeed a serious hurricane, whether Andrew Holness is Prime Minister, whether Portia Simpson Miller is Prime Minister, or whether Bruce Golding is Prime Minister. It's just one of those things that we are exposed to, we are vulnerable to as a state situated in the Caribbean basin. But what is important, Anthony, and just before I come to your next question, what is important is that being proactive and being astute enough to recognize that, listen, since we are always going to be exposed to these developments, why don't we prepare ourselves and try to secure and engender greater levels of resilience as a country? So, for example, if you know that, boy, whenever it rains, you suffer a particular flooding at your house and whatever, you can take steps and be preemptive and proactive in doing things that shore up your own residence and your own household, so that when weather systems come or when a torrential downpour of rain comes, as it will from time to time, you can better withstand it. So that is precisely what has happened in Jamaica's case. The Jamaican, well, the finance minister and the government as a whole focused considerably on building up what we call fiscal buffers. In other words, setting aside some resources so that in the event of an adverse weather event or an adverse external shock, such as Hurricane Beryl, Jamaica doesn't have to go around the world cap in hand begging for hurricane relief. You would have set aside a certain degree of funds, a certain pool of funds to be able to respond. And so when Beryl struck, the government was able to respond in a fairly timely manner in terms of the issuance of over 14,000 checks, as it were, through the Ministry of Labor and Social Security to households and persons who were badly affected by the passage of Hurricane Beryl. And in the agricultural sector, to help our farmers get back on their feet, get back into the field and get back into production, through the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, support was made available to our farmers. So much so that in the supermarkets and in the marketplaces and at the farm gate now, we're seeing considerable moderation in prices because the farmers have been resilient. As you know, Jamaican farmers are tough and formidable people. They continue to be diligent and hardworking. They have gone back into production, notwithstanding the vulnerabilities that they will always face in terms of open field production in particular. And we're seeing the results of that at the supermarkets now because prices have begun to moderate considerably.
So we just want our viewers to get this fact that even though the textbook says something, at this present time, Jamaica is not in a recession.
And I'll share a bit more of technical information so that the listeners understand why it is that we are contending as we're contending. I had made mention earlier about a number of variables, right? Now, a recession is usually characterized by a downturn in economic activity such that you have a downturn in businesses. In other words, because less people are buying, the entity that produces X, Y, or Z find that less people are patronizing their establishment. If you have a business enterprise and less people are buying goods and services, you may find that your production has to be cut. When a business place's production is cut, that business place may have to end up laying off staff because it doesn't make sense for you to keep the 50 workers that you had producing 1,000 units of a certain product when only 500 units of that product is now being sold. So I want the listeners and the viewers to understand that in a very fundamental way. When you have a recession, you often have displacement in terms of jobs. You have job losses and unemployment goes up. In the Jamaican context, we note that what is happening with jobs is essentially job creation. Unemployment is going down. At present, unemployment is in the order of 3.5%, which is the lowest it has ever been historically here in Jamaica. And importantly, more people are employed in Jamaica at present than at any time previously in the history of this country, with the exception, of course, of slavery. So Jamaica is virtually at full employment, my friend. So there is no credible and technically sound basis on which someone could reasonably contend that Jamaica is in a recession. In fact, entities that are pundits and experts on this kind of matter, international entities such as the IMF and the World Bank, they have long moved away from this isolated consideration of economic output as an indicator or a determinant as to whether an economy is in recession. Because the IMF, they have adopted a more comprehensive, a more holistic, and a more progressive basis on determining the health of an economy. So they look to such things as consumer spending, what is happening with aggregate demand in the economy, what is happening with jobs, what is happening with business and consumer confidence, and what is happening with the outlook for the economic activity going forward. So in Jamaica's case, we have not had job losses. What we have had is unemployment going further south. Jobs are being created. People are being able to access work.
Yes,
what we have had is an increase in people's purchasing power. Yes? So people are spending. And importantly, a poll was essentially undertaken a few weeks ago. It is essentially the Business and Consumer Confidence Survey, which is one of those measures of economic health and the condition of the economy that the business community sponsors and undertakes through a research entity. That research entity in this case is MRSL, Market Research Limited, Don Anderson's outfit. So that entity, Market Research Limited, I think it is, they go out and they interface with consumers generally and with business people as well. And they do so under the auspices of I think it is the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce. So it is the private sector that contracts these researchers to gauge each quarter how people feel about the economy. And based on the latest results of the Business and Consumer Confidence Survey, business and consumer confidence are up, they are at healthy levels, and importantly, the consumer confidence is now back at pre-COVID levels. So based on the latest consumer confidence, for example, we have determined that the pre-COVID-19 levels, which is a measure in 2019, is where we are at in present. So it gives you a sense as to how people feel about the economy at present and how optimistic people are about the Jamaican economy and the prospects in the economy in the weeks and months that are to come.
Thank you, Senator Morgan. The next thing I want to touch on, where I think some misinformation is in the public domain, is tax. I run across something on the leader of the opposition Instagram page, with him implying that he's asking people that if they receive a ticket from the police recently and stuff like that, implying that even though the government is saying no new taxes, the government might be taxing them via the security force.
Well,
respond to that.
Yeah, all right. So first of all, I mean, desperation is as desperation does. Quite frankly, this is about the third, if not the fourth consecutive year, certainly in budget season, where Mark Golding, the leader of the opposition, a gentleman who is auditioning to be prime minister, a gentleman who is the alternative, or at least leader of the party that is the alternative to the governing Jamaica Labour Party, is coming with this kind of sleight of hand and this duplicitous tactic of trying to mislead the people of Jamaica in relation to taxes. So just to be very clear, Mark Golding is seeking to conflate tax rate with tax take. So what he's trying to suggest is that the government says no new taxes, but the government is actually collecting more in taxes. Now, what we want to say to Mr. Golding in no uncertain terms, yes, and we're totally unequivocal on the matter, is that what you want to have in an economy is precisely what is happening in the Jamaican economy at present, meaning taxes have been stable, so tax rates have not moved. Yes, if anything, tax rates have come south, as they have in the case of electricity, where it will be moving from 15% in terms of GCT on electricity to the 7.5% announced by Prime Minister Holness when he spoke at the Jamaica Labour Party's annual conference back in November. So this is about the third, if not the fourth consecutive budget season where Mark Golding is seeking to raise this point. Dr. Nigel Clark, who would have been our finance minister in those periods of time, would have knocked down his duplicitous argument several times over when he closed the budget debate and countered and responded to that assertion by Mark Golding. So just for the benefit of listeners, what you want when you are presiding over an economy and managing an economy is for your tax measures that you have in place to perform. You want your taxes to work efficiently. You want them to be simple. You want them to be readily collectible, and you want them to be certain. So, which is why this government has gone the route of prioritizing and placing an emphasis on tax compliance, but also importantly, indirect taxes, because we feel philosophically that people must determine what taxes they pay. So when we increase the income tax threshold, we are taking less money out of your pocket in terms of direct taxation. And what we have done is that strategically we're saying, listen, allow business activity which, spurs and so on, business activity which is turning over to considerably contribute to your suite of revenue flows. So taxes have not increased. In fact, come Tuesday, the 11th of March, the finance minister, Jamaica's first female finance minister, the Honorable Favour Williams, will be presenting a budget which will essentially be the 10th consecutive budget for the 10th consecutive year that the Jamaica Labour Party government is presenting with no net new taxes. And it will be the 9th consecutive budget being presented by the Jamaica Labour Party government where there is no new taxes. So 9 years of no new taxes, 10 consecutive years of no net new taxes. So what you're seeing from the opposition leader is an attempt to frame something that is an actual positive as a negative. Because what he's suggesting is that the government says it is collecting no new taxes. Yes, or it is not levying new taxes, but it is collecting more in revenue. Well, the point is that that is precisely what you want to happen in an economy. You want business activity to increase in such a way that more GCT flows are coming. You want people to be expanding their investments and expanding their business operations and doing all of the things in the economy that actually sees you as government raising more tax revenue. That is why we speak about economic growth. Economic growth is not an end in and of itself. Economic growth serves a particular purpose. And what is that purpose? Economic growth will help to generate levels of tax revenue that will enable the government to do more in terms of the delivery of critical public services and improve the quality of life for the people. So in other words, it is tax revenue that builds roads, constructs bridges, puts programs in schools, for example, nutrition program, provides support to vulnerable groups, for example, people on path. Yes, put more police cars on the road, pay public sector workers and facilitate reasonable increases in the salaries of public sector workers. All of these things are done by tax revenues. And so you want tax revenues to be performing. And as I said before, based on the reforms that have come with the IMF program over the years, certainly over the past decade, based on the investments that have been made in securing greater levels of tax compliance in the country, because the fundamental philosophy is that you want persons paying their fair share. You don't want people to be tax dodgers and tax evaders. Businesses that are doing business and are earning should be paying their taxes and paying their fair share, so that we can do more for the elderly. We can do more for children who are wards of the state and in children's homes. You can do more in terms of hospitals and the delivery of public health care, purchasing diagnostic equipment, and of course, ensuring basically that the infrastructure in the country is sound and befitting, because everybody wants to have water system in their homes. Everybody wants to have useful and good network of road to travel on across the country.
Yeah. I was really taken aback when I was listening to the opposition leader's presentation, when he was trying to imply that the increase in tax revenue would equal to new taxes. And I am saying, no, this is efficiency, a government who has created a better economy and also create more spaces where persons find it easier to pay their taxes. So persons can pay taxes online. They're using the technology.
Exactly. When you expand and make it easier for people to pay taxes, you are fostering greater levels of compliance. You're making the system more fit for purpose and more seamless, which includes, of course, the large tax office, I believe, up at Constant Spring.
Right. And if you do that, then you are going to have an increase in revenue. So increase in taxes, viewers and subscribers, increase in revenues does not mean an increase in or any new taxes. And it's there for you to see plain. There is no new tax for the last 9 budget cycles. So let's put that argument to rest.
And I just have a closeout observation to make on this issue. Because I wrote a press release in the middle of last week and had it issued, where I drew attention to this vulgar, despicable, and desperate attempt by the opposition leader to try and resonate with voters, because that's what everything that is happening from them is essentially being driven by politics and political considerations. We're not eunuchs, we're not unmindful of the fact that our political system is competitive. Yes, we know that when you are government, there's a set of people who want to replace you and form government. So that is fine. And we accept the competitive nature of the politics. But it cannot be that persons, including the opposition leader, Mark Golding, is prepared to wallow in the political morass and become so desperate that he's sending signals that are very destructive and deleterious, certainly inimical to Jamaica's interests. And I give you an example, which is why I had issued a press release and called him out on it. Jamaica has a challenge with our road safety and our usage of our roads. The indiscipline that pervades our society manifests itself on our roadways as well. When a man is overtaking a line of traffic, overtaking where there is the unbroken white line, overtaking on the soft shoulder, littering the public thoroughfare with garbage and items that are being discarded from the vehicle. All of these things, are reflective of, they are symptomatic of the general breakdown in our society and the indiscipline in our society. So now we have road traffic rules that are in place, and there is none of the rules that are in place you could consider them as being arbitrary. So whether you as a motorist fail to stop at a stop sign, whether you break a street light, a traffic light, for example, you break the red light, whether you essentially drive without your seatbelt, you drive with a broken headlight, all of those things are, of course, the most common one, which is the breaking of the speed limit. When you commit any of those violations of the Road Traffic Act, yes, essentially, the regime is in place that will see you being penalized for it by way of a traffic ticket, and in some cases, there are fines attached. Some fines for some offenses will, of course, vary, right? But the point is, as an opposition leader, Mark Golding should be encouraging people to adhere to the law. He should be encouraging compliance with the law, especially in a context where in Jamaica, we have so much disorder on our roadways, and especially in a context where here in Jamaica, we have so many lives being lost due to disorderly conduct and reckless use of our roadways. We record upwards of 300 deaths almost annually for the past number of years. And that is not something that we should see as being normal. We have a problem, and our motorists should be more responsible and be more courteous to other road users, because oftentimes the loss of life in motor vehicle crashes is not occasioned by the person who is the wrongdoer. Oftentimes, innocent people, for example, you are traversing a corridor of road and a man who is overtaking a line of traffic crashes into you. That's a head-on accident, and that motorist may lose their life when they were in fact doing nothing wrong. They were just going about their business and going about their merry way. So when you have a situation where an opposition leader is going to try and exploit people's disgrunt because they may have had a traffic ticket issued to them, that's a despicable and disgusting thing to resort to in the name of weaponizing the laws and the police's enforcement of the laws so that you can resonate or somehow, in your view, curry favor with the electorate. That is just, a new law, as it were.
Right.
And that's why we are urging him. We're not surprised, but we're calling him out on wallowing in the political morass.
And I just want to make it clear here, Marlon, that personally I believe in democracy, and I like to have an opposition, and yes, an effective opposition. But the problem that I have, and is the main reason for this show, is that if you are going to go to the public, let's be honest with the public. Tell them the truth. Tell us what you, who has been in opposition for over 9 years now, what are you bringing to the table? Why we need to elect you? Not lies, downright misleading lies. And that is what we are against. All right?
But just before you come to your next question or topic, just on this same point here, there's a reason why the opposition has been a bit guarded, almost paranoid, I would say, about setting out their store in terms of their plans and their ideas as to what it is that they're offering to the people of Jamaica, the basis on which they are asking the people to elect them to form government and replace this administration that is performing so well and has been delivering for the people. Now, whenever they come with ideas or tell us what they are intent on doing, it is shut down by the Jamaican people, and they know it. Last year, we heard from Damian Crawford, insofar as education, that he wants a special tax, a GCT amount to fund certain initiatives in education. A few weeks ago, we heard from Dr. Dayton Campbell. He was speaking at the time down in St. Elizabeth in front of a group of farmers. And this is one of the things we find as well. The PNP, quite frankly and quite obviously, are in the business of selling some things and fooling up respective audiences that they appear in front of. So if they're speaking to a group of teachers, they're going to just talk some absurd things that they believe the teachers want to hear. If they're speaking with a group of farmers, they're going to speak some far-fetched things that they believe a group of farmers want to hear. And that is how they've been going about it. So if you come back to that meeting in St. Elizabeth, where Dayton Campbell was referencing in that conversation, the Universal Service Fund, when it was established, it was the Universal Access Fund. He also referenced the Tourism Enhancement Fund, TEF. Those are special funds that certainly when they were established served as a particular purpose, special purpose. When he made mention of his ideas in St. Elizabeth, he said, now is the time for us to add a little thing. So basically, he was proposing a new tax, adding a little thing on the imported food items into the country. Now, because they recognize the public pushback and just the considerable criticism that they have suffered as a result of that utterance by Dayton Campbell, the Prime Minister described it as a stupid suggestion. Quite frankly, that is what it is, although I had used other words at the time. I described it as ill-advised. I described it as counterproductive because, it obviously will have harmful effects on Jamaica because people who pay taxes, business people, they don't absorb the taxes and leave it there. It ultimately gets passed on to whom? It gets passed on to consumers.
Yes,
So
yes.
just to be clear, when Dr. Campbell said what he said, when the PNP noted that they were being roasted on Twitter, roasted on social media, and roasted in traditional media as well, they quickly walked it back or sought to walk it back by saying Dr. Campbell wasn't speaking to new taxes. He was speaking to the existing suite of import duties on food items, agricultural products being imported. And that could not have been the case because his words were clear. He said, now is the time for us to add a little thing. You can add a little thing to something that exists already. So
yes.
that's just the vulgar, despicable way in which the PNP takes the people of Jamaica for fools. They literally say something, and you having heard them, because as far as I'm concerned, Dr. Campbell, he did not speak in Hebrew, he did not speak in Portuguese, he did not speak in French. He spoke in plain Jamaican Standard English and in the Jamaican language, which is Patois. He said, now is the time for us to add a little thing. It is very clear what he was speaking about. We heard him clearly and he spoke clearly in much the same way as he spoke clearly on those Lawrence Road tapes.
Yes. I will leave the Lawrence Show case for another show, but I will say this here. Just one quick point on that we still need answers. There's questions that need to be answered, and this is not a 9-day wonder. It's not. There are so many unanswered questions on that topic, but I'm going to leave that for another show. Senator Morgan, quickly, tell me, what happened at Sigma?
Well, I wasn't at the event, and like many other Jamaicans, I saw photos emerging from the event. I know that the Prime Minister, as one of the, leading political figures in the country, makes it his point of duty to support this event each year. I believe that this year was his 15th year of participating in the initiative because, as everybody knows, Sagicor Sigma Corporate Run is an event for a worthy cause. They sponsor charitable causes and charitable endeavors, yeah? So we saw images coming out with the opposition leader being donned. He was dressed in his shorts and the sponsor's shirt. The Prime Minister also had images coming out on social media. He too was in his, participants kit. But we note that the Prime Minister had an entrant number on his shirt. Mark Golding didn't have an entrant number on his shirt. So just to be clear, persons would have gotten up early that Sunday morning and gone to the Sagicor Sigma Corporate Run to either run or walk at the event.
Right.
Mark Golding apparently got dressed, left his yard, went there to do no such thing, but to simply pose like a 66. He simply went there to campaign apparently, or to just politic, because he neither ran nor walked. And the truth of the matter is that he had images all over social media which would have given observers, for example, like Cliff Hughes, the impression that he actually ran. And what we're saying to Mark Golding is that, listen, man, you can't ever run Sagicor. Or if you come yes? And that kind of hoodwinking of the people of Jamaica helps to expose him for precisely what he is.
And that's my problem again. The deception. The deception, trying to deceive, trying to put something out there when you know it's not. It's a total opposite. And that is where I have a problem. If you need to present a check and said that's what you did. But if you weren't participating, make it look like that. That's my problem.
And of course, he was there with an entourage, all clad in orange. People like Andre Hilton, who, is encircling the wagon, as it were, perhaps trying to see what he can glean in the weeks and months to come. Yes? Yeah. So, like we said, we will call them out on it, and we will continue to call them out for their sleight of hand and desperation, because a lot of that is happening You see it with, as we were discussing earlier, a set of people who are clamoring for Jamaica to be in recession because they believe that speaking of a recession and creating an outlook and a narrative of negativity around the Jamaican economy will shore up their political chances. They believe that speaking about police killings, for example, will shore up their prospects of political success. They believe that speaking about taxes, the increase in tax revenues, and not the tax rate, they believe that that will shore up their political chances. But we want to send a clear message that whenever those lies emerge, a group of us are here to mash down those lies. And I want to use this platform to register in clear and unequivocal terms that the government supports the work of the police, irrespective of those persons who are seeking to suggest that the increase in police and fatal shootings or fatalities, yes, is somehow to be taken as a disturbing sign because it means that there is wanton abuse of the powers of the police. We are very clear that the lawful discharge of the police's responsibility is to be supported. That is what we support. Of course, any police officer who goes rogue, who does anything that is unprofessional and engages in extrajudicial killings that cannot be justified, yes, is an errant police officer who should face the full force of the law, as we have had in the past in this country. But in the main, we know that the police are being very targeted. We know that the police has considerable intelligence at their disposal and they're acting on that intelligence. The capacity of the police force has been enhanced. The Prime Minister often says it whenever he gets the opportunity, that the JCF is a different outfit. It's a different Jamaica Constabulary Force that we have today relative to what it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. And the police can rest assured that it has the 150% support of the governing Jamaica Labour Party in the discharge of their work. So whether it is that, so when they go out and gunmen, instead of laying down their arms and choosing to meet the judge, continue to clutch their arms and take on the security forces or confront the security forces with deadly firepower. The security forces, as the commissioner said on Friday, they are appropriately trained and they will be responding appropriately. They'll be taking appropriate action and they were trained to come out as victors and successors. So we want the police to continue in that vein, be professional, be responsible, and when you're confronted by deadly firepower and marauding gunmen who are not keen on surrendering peacefully, ensure that they meet their maker, since they have chosen not to meet a judge.
This is the image, viewers and subscriber, that we're talking about, and you see the opposition leader here. I think this was a photo op, but he looked like he was ready to participate. Except that he wasn't wearing a number bib to show that he had an entry to participate.
Yeah. All of the contestants would have gotten an entrant number and they would have done it on their shirt when they are set to take part in the run or the walk.
All right, Senator Morgan, we're coming to the end of the show. I only have 5 minutes left, but the nationwide Blue Dot poll, nationwide recently do a poll, and it shows a lot of positive for the Jamaica Labour Party, but it also shows that there is a lot of work to be done and stuff. So I know that persons who are sympathizers or supporters of the JLP are excited about those poll numbers, but a poll is really a snapshot in time. So I want you to talk to those persons to tell them, yes, the poll is showing that the party is ahead, But does it mean that they become complacent now, or does it mean that the work just begun?
So absolutely no room for or no place for complacency. Yeah. I was one of the analysts and the respondents when Nationwide had its big reveal. We note the 6-point lead that the Jamaican Labour Party is said by Blue Dot, based on its most recent poll, to now enjoy. That is well outside of the margin of error, 2.5%, in terms of the Labour Party's response. And based on my own interactions with colleagues, certainly in the leadership of the party and supporters of the party generally, as a party, we are upbeat, we are optimistic, we are buoyed and encouraged by these poll numbers because we are mindful of the trends that are at play. In September of last year, when Blue Dot would have last been in the field, we know that the JLP enjoyed a 3% lead in the polls at that time, which essentially was not largely outside of the margin of error, which was, I believe, that may have been 3% at the time. So it was essentially a statistical dead heat. We would have pulled ahead quite appreciably, certainly being well outside of the margin of error at 6%. And as far as trends go, we are upbeat about the trends because it is suggesting that a degree of momentum is coming our way. The start of calendar year 2025 has been great for us so far in terms of a number of slips and errors on the part of the PNP. We are of the view that they will continue because, as we say in Jamaica, the higher the proverbial monkey climbs, the more he's exposed. And the PNP is being exposed increasingly for who and what they are. You hear stories about Senate seat being for sale. You hear, the PNP's General Secretary in his own words. You hear Mayor Swaby talking about gel up the thing and grill up the thing. You hear Jamaica has heard these people in their own words. The Jamaican people see and know what they're about. And notwithstanding Mark Golding seeking to present himself as someone who will be holding wrongdoers to account, we note that whenever allegations, yes, of inappropriate conduct in public life emerge, or whenever persons who are associated with his political party do things that bring into question their standing, there's no action or ramifications from Mark Golding. So it's very clear as to where we are at present. We will continue to communicate to the people. We will continue to do the work on their behalf. The Prime Minister will continue to go around the country issuing out houses to deserving and vulnerable, Jamaicans through the Hope, the new social housing program. Desmond McKenzie will continue to issue indigent houses to persons who are, deemed to be in need of poor relief as well. And all of our other programs, many of which yourself, Anthony, and your listeners and subscribers will be hearing about when Favour Williams presents the budget and when the Prime Minister rises to make his own contribution to the budget. Jamaicans will be hearing more about the many things that we're coming with and all the things that we have done so far these past, few years since we took office initially in March 2016. Some things are for sure, and essentially the polls are bearing it out. One of those things essentially is that the people have come to know and trust that the undertakings that we give are things that we abide by. The people have come to know and trust that we are responsible and prudent managers of the economy. Whenever an election is in the air, you usually have governments presenting a run with it budget or doing things that are fiscally reckless. You're not seeing that in this case. We are presenting goodies. We are doing things that will improve the life of the Jamaican people in the budget, but we are not doing so in ways that would be reckless or deleterious in terms of the sacrifices the people have made. Because if we were to be reckless, we would be no different from a cow who gives you a bucket of milk and turns around and kick over that bucket of milk. So we're not about that life. We look forward to the goodies that will be announced in the weeks ahead in terms of the budget. And we're encouraging the people of Jamaica to keep faith with the administration, to keep faith with the Andrew Holness-led Jamaica Labour Party government, because we are a safe pair of hands. We have been steadily navigating this ship called Jamaica in sometimes choppy seas. The economy is resilient, and it is resilient largely because we have managed the economy well. We have maintained macroeconomic stability, and we have put the dividends of that macroeconomic stability back in the hands of the people. That is why we have been able to provide $20,000 in our reverse income tax credit. That is why we have been able to expand JUTC routes to ensure that the people from out in Morant Bay and Yalas, in St. Thomas, and people up in Castleton, in Southeast St. Mary, can also commute via the JUTC, where the fare points are a bit lower, and we're rolling out a rural school bus system. It has long been talked about in Jamaica, but it has never come to fruition. And this JP government is bringing the rural school bus system to fruition. And there are many more things to come, but I am mindful that time is upon us.
Yes,
and we will have
yes.
subsequent occasions on which to unpack some of these things in even greater detail.
And interestingly, you spoke about that $20,000, because I saw a Gleaner article recently that over 4,000 persons are still there to collect theirs. Yeah. So we are encouraging them to collect that $20,000. Is the government giving back to you your tax money? That, exactly. I mean, the economy in a good state, and the government chooses to give back some money to you. So why not collect that $20,000? Senator Morgan, I want to thank you very much for joining me on this first show. As I said in the beginning, the goal of this show is to explore truth. We want the Jamaican people to know what is true. So when you go to the poll or when you listen to your political representatives, you know that what they're saying to you is true. And that's the objective of this show. So again, I want to thank you very much for joining me, Senator Morgan.
Yeah, and thanks, sir.
Yes, man. Bless. All right. And for my viewers and my subscriber, this is the first show. I want you all just to share the link, like, subscribe, share, and join me here every Sunday, same time, as we explore truth here on The View. See you next week.